I am Angela Holton and I work for Thickbroom Accountants and I've worked here for over 20 years.
I am Emily Rachita and I'm a Payroll apprentice within Thickbroom and I started in September. So, what qualities and traits would you expect a successful apprentice to possess?
I feel like an apprentice needs to have the drive to succeed and the organisational skills to be able to understand what they need to get done at each stage of the course. But when it comes to actual knowledge around the subject, most of the time that can be taught on the job, and that's what apprenticeships are really all about. I think we're very lucky that we've got a good recruitment process that seems to be able to attract those people with those qualities.
What would you say are the benefits of an apprenticeship over other forms of education and training?
The fact that you get to interact so much with somebody who's doing the job that you are inspired to do, you get mentoring, one-to-one training, all the things and all the guidance that you need alongside experience. So you've got the fact that you're going to college, you're learning the key sort of skills to do the job, and then you get to do it in real life as well. It's very different to going to university where it's all theory and then you turn up at the job and actually it can be very different. Whereas when you're doing an apprenticeship, you get to see the two side by side and marry them up.
That's the reason why I started an apprenticeship. I really like the fact that you could combine kind of theory and physical work into one rather than just a lecture type of structure and not actually hands-on with the job.
Absolutely, I'm very much a visual learner, and I always have questions when I'm learning, sort of like how does this work in real life, or can you give me a real life scenario? And with apprenticeships, you're going to get that day to day. You spend most of your time doing real work that's relevant to what you're learning, and it really supports that learning ready for when you're doing your exams.
How do you support your apprentices?
So all of our apprentices get a mentor that isn't always necessarily their line manager, although quite often is. The mentor is there for not just support of the subject, but support of anything that happens in a working environment, whether you feel that you're connecting with other people within the firm, or whether there might be any other issue outside of work as well. We try and get our apprentices to be able to interact with different teams by running fraternity events, kind of like a house system in school. So because we've got so many teams that all have their own focus, we like everybody to be able to interact and get to work with different people, whether they be managers, directors or apprentices, so that everyone gets to interact and gets to know each other well.
What criteria are you looking for in applicants and apprenticeships?
Definitely not a fear of IT skills. In a modern world, we all have to face the fear of IT. But we do support people who might not have had as much IT skill as others. Depending on what school you've gone to, it can be very varied what you've been introduced to. So, and in any workplace, there are different systems. So just because, for example, at this accountancy practice, we use one type of software, you might use a very different type of software at another practice. So everyone's learning all the time, and we could switch systems next week. So we could all end up in the same boat. Not fearing IT is definitely a good skill, but the desire to work hard, have a good work ethic is definitely the sort of things we want in our applicants. So if people show that willing in interview, they definitely make the shortlist.
What makes an apprenticeship with Thickbroom and HRC different to all employers?
Hopefully all employers are sort of taking the same approach, but generally we're really pleased with our apprenticeship scheme because we've put those mentors in place. We really work closely with HRC to find out what's in those units that students are studying, and finding out what work we've got coming up that could marry up with those skills that they're learning, so that they're getting that real life experience. And we also really try and think about what would we have wanted if we were on an apprenticeship scheme. How would we want to be supported? And ultimately, if we treat our apprentices well and show them the kindness that we want, those apprentices, when they become managers, will do the same for the apprentices coming through in the future.
What advice would you give to other employers interested in starting apprenticeships?
Absolutely do it. It's a really good way to grow your business. From growing your business from sort of the lower sort of level upwards, because I feel like as long as you're doing it for the right reasons and you've got the time to commit to doing it well, you'll get the rewards, because those people will appreciate that you spent time on them. You'll build a relationship with those staff, and they'll want to stay because you'll have looked after them, and if you look after them, they'll look after you back.
Apprenticeships are one of the oldest forms of formal education and training. Where do you think apprenticeships sit within the modern world?
Probably going to be at the top pretty soon. I mean, I know at the moment there's still that kind of hesitancy, I think, from people about whether or not it's as good as a degree, but there's degree apprenticeships, and where there's the opportunity for people to learn and do the work at the same time. At the end of 3 years, they're going to be in a much stronger position for employability, in that they've got the education and they've got the work experience and they've got no debt. So really, it's a bit of a no-brainer that, you know, apprenticeships are definitely the way forward.
And what do you think the future will look like for apprenticeships?
I think they're going to become a lot more popular. Schools are already really sort of letting students know that there are multiple pathways to the career of their choice, and I know there's some things that still need a degree, but an apprenticeship's a really good way to get your foot in the door into the industry that you want to do. So definitely look into apprenticeships, even if you aren't aware of that industry having an apprenticeship. You'll be surprised what ones do. Previously accountants never had apprenticeships, but we had training contracts, which was a very similar thing, and it just kind of makes sense now that apprenticeships is the way forward.
In your opinion, are there any job roles or industries in the future that you think would benefit if they had apprenticeships?
All of them, I think. All of them. It's one of those things where, because you're learning on the job, you're getting very experienced people very, very quickly that are learning educationally as well. There's not really many sectors I can think of that wouldn't benefit from apprenticeships, and that can be directly into things like accounting and finance, but we also offer business apprenticeships as well, and any sector would need that.
If you could go back in time, would you consider taking an apprenticeship if it was available?
100%. I so wish I had even known about apprenticeships. When I was at school, it was all about whether or not you were going to university. My school really were interested in who was going to Oxford or Cambridge, which I look back now and see so many people that did, like at the time there was only things like electrician or construction industry apprenticeships. That was what apprenticeships were as far as we knew. And I look at those people now and see how successful they are running their own business because they learned on the job. A couple of people I knew did go into this sector in what was an equivalent of an apprenticeship, and they're doing really well for themselves. So definitely apprenticeships are something I feel like I missed out on.